It shocks me how many portfolio landlords I know that have built a successful property portfolio but don't know the first thing about the conveyancing process. And that's exactly what I'm going to be breaking down in today's video. I won't lie, solicitors have become the bane of my life from time to time, but people don't really appreciate how much they get pulled left, right and centre, and without even understanding the process that they go through. So first of all, what is the conveyancing process? Well, put simply, it's all of the legal and administrative work involved in the transfer of ownership of a property. So who uses them? Well, typically you would use a solicitor for three reasons. Number one is if you are buying or investing in a property. Number two, if you are selling or being the vendor of a property, or if you are refinancing or remortgaging the property to represent the lender that's going to lend on your investment. When doing due diligence on your solicitor, you need to make sure they are part of the SRA, which is the Solicitor Regulation Authority. And what you may find is they've decided to specialize and become part of the CLC, which is the Council of Licensed Conveyancers. Now, a conveyancer in property terms is somebody that has decided to specialize in the property conveyancing process. It is not a requirement, but it is nice as an additional thing to have if they are representing your purchase. So a question that you might not think of asking is, do you need a solicitor to purchase or sell a property? And the answer is actually no. Very similar to a mortgage broker in that you don't actually need a broker, you can talk directly to the bank. The same with your legal paperwork, you don't actually need a solicitor to represent you. But two things on that. Number one, is pretty normalized, it's standardized in the UK, and two, I just wouldn't recommend it. There's a lot of legal jargon in all of the paperwork when you're selling or buying a property, and frankly, who's got the time, let alone the understanding of what those words mean? So personally, I would strongly recommend getting one in place. Also, if you've got a lender, often they will look for SEP-REP, which is separate representation, and so they will insist on you having a legal representative representing your answers to the paperwork. So what costs are involved in conveyancing? Well, if you are the vendor of the solicitor, and the reason why it's worth mentioning that is as the investor, a lot of the times you will pay for the vendor's legals to get the best deals. They're usually around £600 plus VAT. Now that's pretty cheap, but actually being the vendor's representative is, from a legal standpoint, is incredibly easy, because often all you're really doing is passing on the questions, making sure they're answered properly and passing them on. From the investor side, it can be much more expensive, and it can range from £300 up to over £1,000 plus VAT, with the average being about £1,000 plus VAT plus disbursements. So my recommendation with that is, if it's £300, and if you're a solicitor charging £300 and you're adding value, maybe listen to this. If somebody's charging £300, I wouldn't go near them, because they are what I would describe as a sausage factory solicitor or conveyancer. Now, I'm a big believer in price is what you pay, value is what you get, and I'm telling you now, you're very unlikely to see that value if you're paying £300 to do your legals. So what the hell are disbursements? Well, disbursements are anything that a third party is passing on the charge to the solicitor, and they are passing it on to you. So the most common one is searches. So when you buy a property, you just need to check if there's anything going on in the local area, mining and things like that. That's typically going to cost around 250 quid. Then you've got things like bank transfers, registering with land reg, and a few other bits. I'd expect all in for your disbursements to come in at about £350, £400 plus VAT, dependent on the property and the location. Quick tip on that, guys. When it comes to disbursements and specifically your searches, a lot of solicitors will put money on top, which I personally don't agree with, because all it's doing is passing on a third party. But searches in particular, they always cost around 250, 300 quid. If you're getting them at 450, 500 pounds, they are putting their margin on. If you're happy with that, fine. But personally, I wouldn't be, because they're not adding a service onto that. So make sure you are getting these at cost. And if not, you can pay for them directly. So what are the steps in this conveyancing process? Well, there's two sides of this. You've got the seller and the buyer. And it's a step-by-step as we're going through. So the first thing that's happening is the seller's solicitor over here will send out the contracts to the vendor. Now, these are protocol forms or LP12s. There's a series of forms, maybe you've seen them, fixture and fittings. The vendor will typically take around a week or two to get them filled out. Now, these are the most important part of the process to get it kicked on, because everything from that moment you can get moving quickly, but nothing can start in the entire process until these contracts are sent back and signed up with the seller's solicitor. Once this has happened, the contract gets sent across over to the buyer's solicitor. Now, typically, the investor, in this case for us, has engaged with the buyer's solicitor, but typically won't talk to them too much in between because they're getting everything done. So whilst the contract pack is sent over, they will review it and they will raise inquiries. Now, inquiries are just questions about the property. In general, there's about 60 to 70 general inquiries. If you've got a good solicitor, they should be able to take out about 20 of those. For example, it'll be asking, what's the ground rent? What's the service charge? Well, if it's a freehold property, there is none, and they should be taking them out and not wasting anyone's time. So what will happen is these inquiries, I'll just put ENQ there, will be sent over, and in the meantime they will issue these searches as well. So remember, the searches are looking at mining reports and everything like that. If it's a cash purchase, they might indemnify those searches, which is an insurance against anything that would come up if they had done the full searches. The reason why a lot of people would do this, by the way, is searches can take 3-4 weeks to come back, but indemnity takes an hour. It's an insurance against them. What will happen is they are then satisfied. What this means is they have answered all of the questions. So that's what happens on paper, of course. The reality is they ask 50 questions. The vendor solicitor will reply to about 20 of them. They'll then go, those 18 are okay, but could you give more info on those 2? And by the way, you haven't answered these other 30. They'll then reply to 10, and it goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. This is why I said solicitors can be the bane of my life from time to time. Logically, raise 50 inquiries, answer the 50, satisfied, move on. But this goes back and forth probably 3 or 4 times before it's fully satisfied. What then will happen is the buyer solicitor will get in touch with the investor and they'll say, hey, all of the inquiries have been satisfied. We're happy with it. Here's the contract pack and the transfer, or the TR1 form. And this is essentially saying we are transferring ownership of the property from the vendor to you, and then the property purchase will exchange, which, by the way, exchanging means it locks out in the legal process, which, by the way, goes like this. Hi, are you ready to exchange? Yes, I'm ready to exchange. Cool, we've exchanged. And then what happens is it completes. And how does that work? Well, this is a really big moment. You send over the money, you call up the other side and go, are you ready to complete? Yes, I'm ready to complete. Okay, we've completed. Congratulations, you own your property. That is literally the legally binding moment of when you own your property. We've gone through what the legal process is, do you actually need it, the full process, and the costs involved. And now I want to break down some of the most common questions I get on a daily basis from my investors. Number 1, do they need to be local? No, you can be anywhere in the world, sipping a pina colada on the beach, and they can be in sunny Scunthorpe. What? Well, that does not go together at all, but they could be anywhere in the world. You can be anywhere. As long as they are bringing the value, you don't need to be near the property. They don't need to be near the property. They don't need to be near you. They can do their job from anywhere in the world, as can you. So no, they do not need to be local. And by the way, the world has changed. Nobody pops in to see their solicitor anymore. Get with the 21st century. Number 2, as the investor, if I pull out of the property, do I still need to pay? Yes. There is something called an abortive fee. By the way, up until about 6 months ago, I used to call it the abortion fee. What? Until somebody told me differently. But it's called the abortive fee. make sure you agree this up front, because there are some solicitors that they could do 2 weeks work, nowhere near the full conveyancing process, and then send you their full fee even if the vendor pulls out. Personally, I like doing it in stages, but do expect some fees, because ultimately they are not paid for you to own the property, they're paid for the time that they're putting into it. Number 3, can I go with an online solicitor? So this is a fairly new concept, but essentially there are solicitor practices out there where you don't actually talk to them. The full system is online, so you can see where it's at. Are they good? Yes and no. As an investor, I'd feel absolutely fine with this, because as long as they are part of the SRA, which makes sure everyone is part of that anyway, I don't really need to talk to them. I don't really like talking to them. And honestly, each time you pick up the phone to them, you are literally stopping them from doing the job that you're trying to get them to do. However, if it's on the vendor side, remember what I said, the legal process is exceptionally easy on the vendor side in the most part, apart from the communication. Remember, if you're wanting to purchase a property quickly and get a great price, the key is a great communication from you and the solicitor. So I definitely would not use one of these new age solicitor practices for the vendor side. And finally, number 4, not a common thing when you think of a solicitor, speed and communication, but the two things I look for is speed and communication. Now, these are one of the most archaic practices in the UK, so don't expect it from many old school firms, but genuinely, if you're dealing with investors, you need great communicators, not just with you, but with each other. Honestly, the amount of times something could be solved with a 2-minute phone call, but took 2 weeks of emails back and forth is redonkulous. Honestly, get people that are not scared to pick up the phone. I often find that each of the solicitors that are best with me will call me from their mobile, they'll communicate effectively, and obviously I'll respect their time, but when you are purchasing a great investment, speed, certainty, clarity, and communication. So that's it from me. This really is a simple process, but a lot of people don't understand it. Now that you understand the end-to-end of this, whether you need them, whether you're going to get them, and what makes a great solicitor, you can engage with more confidence in your next purchase, knowing that they are going to communicate effectively and move to the best of their ability in an effective manner. Hopefully you got value from this video, and if you did, make sure to hit the like button and let me know what you thought of it in the comments. And if you're new to the channel and you're interested in property investment and scaling your portfolio, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video.